I'm looking forward. Hello, everybody. Please switch on your Zoom.
Hello.
So if anything happens during our talk, announce it in chat, please.
Okay.
Warmly welcome to our Zoom reunion, ladies. 11/11/2021. We are still waiting for Elnas. Here she is. Hello. So warmly welcome. Finally, we met here in our small space on Zooms, but actually big space for us. This event is in the scope of the 51st program of Slovenian Drama Festival, National Festival, and organized together with the Theater in Kranj, Prešernovo gledališče, and Women Playwrights International and Slovenian Center ITI. And for all those who are following this talk, I would like to say we gathered from all parts, all the corners of the world. Thanks also to August to help me with the casting. So we will be traveling from Europe. Here is Simona with me, and then we have ladies from Philippines. We have a South American representative from Chile, and we have ladies from Australia, so Rosemary and Melody, and also Ilnas is living now in Australia. Hope you are doing all right and the connection is good. You can hear me, you can see me. So, okay. First, I would like to invite August to tell us a little bit about Women Playwrights International, a big international network organization which has bases on all continents of the world. You are very active women preparing the next worldwide conference in Canada next year. So August, please shortly who you are, what you do, what is your organization?
Thank you, Tatiana, for the invitation and of course for the whole team of the Cannes Festival and in Slovenia for having us Women Playwrights International as your partner for this 51st celebration of your festival. I am August Melody Andong, a playwright from Philippines. I am actually located in the Visayas region of the country, and I am currently the Asian region representative of Women Playwrights International, at the same time the president of the organization. And basically the WPI is an organization, non-government organizations, which allows, say, women playwrights all over the world to meet and build networks and create genuine, lasting contacts between women playwrights and theater professionals worldwide. And we really aim to have an impact by supporting each other for conducting collaborative work between people from different parts of the world. And every 3 years, we conduct a triennial conference. It started actually in 1988 and from Buffalo, New York. And then after that, 3 years, every 3 years, we're doing a conference. It followed in Toronto, Canada, Adelaide, Australia in 94, Galway in Ireland in 97, 2000, that's in Athens, Greece. And then we traveled to Philippines in 2003, Jakarta, Indonesia in 2006, Mumbai in 2009. And then in the 2012, we went to Stockholm, Sweden. And then in 2015, Cape Town, South Africa. And the last conference, the 2018, that was conducted in Santiago, Chile. And we are actually preparing for the next conference. Actually, it's supposed to be this year, 2021, but due to pandemic, we have to move back the conference for 1 year, and that's going to be conducted in June 2022 in Montreal, Canada. But this time, it's not going to be a face-to-face event, but a full virtual event. And this will allow even a more participation from diverse women around the world, despite the pandemic and sometimes the difficulty of traveling. So we decided to have it a full virtual event so that everyone can actually join and we can have a very big reunion. And Tatiana was one of the jury members of our European region selection of plays for the Montreal conference. And alongside with that, we are already preparing as well the next conference to be held in 2025 in Seoul, Korea. So we're really kind of looking forward that, and by the time that the conference in Korea would be a face-to-face event, and this is something that everyone really looks forward to, the meeting of women, the exchanges and the talks and the sharing of works that we do. And some of our colleagues in WPI are here with us, and later they will share their experiences. And of course, with me is Rosemary Johns from Australia as my colleague and vice president of WPI.
Thank you, August.
Thank you.
Thank you, August. This was really nice introduction for all those who are following us online. I have to say there's also some people here with me in this space, so I'm not alone, which is really nice. But it's also for you is very early or late night hour, and for ladies from Australia is really, really late night. So we try to find the best time possible also for you to still be awake for this reunion. And yes, it's nice we can take advantage of virtual reality in a way, but you know, we are present where we are home, and also our work is really important wherever we come from. So I would like first, because we should do some small waves around, I would like to go to South America to greet Jimena. So before we started, Jimena, hello. Before we started, I told you I follow the situation in Chile. 2019, political situation, then the virus came. How are you people? What's going on?
We are quite tired, I guess. It's quite different, something that we used to talk about. Maybe I present myself first. My name is Jimena Carrera Venegas. I am an actress and playwright from Chile. I'm also my English is not very good, so please excuse me.
Okay.
I'm also a representative for Latin America in WPI. And well, my dramatic work usually talks about recent events, political recent events in Chile and our memory as a nation. And as Tatiana, you were just saying, on 2019, there was a social revolt in Chile. And basically because we live in a quite economically not equal society. There's people who have a lot of money. Maybe it's something that goes around the world, of course, and people who live under very poor conditions. So it burned out, the country sort of burned out because our government raised it's a detail, but it was quite symbolic. It raised the rate, the price for the subway ticket on 30 pesos, Chilean pesos. That would be sort of 5 cents of an American dollar. But that was enough for people to say, enough, we can't go on. It was a lot of money for people who really don't have the economic resources to live on a sort of a normal basis. So the beauty of it was that the younger people, I mean, teenagers from public schools, they said, we won't pay the metro ticket. Our parents don't have to pay that metro ticket. So they started jumping the entrance of the subway. And it was all like the perfect storm, because also the government said, well, if it is too expensive for you to pay the subway ticket, maybe you can wake up earlier. So it was quite an ugly thing to say, because people already wake up very early to get to their jobs. They usually travel about 2 hours to get to their jobs. So it was something very cruel. So, well, the system, the economical system sort of collapsed. It was weeks of uncertainty. And the only way we would deal with this was going out to the streets, marching a lot, and organizing with our neighbors to talk about what was the country we were dreaming of, and the country that we were not living in. So the result of that was that now we are writing our constitution with people, 155 persons are writing from different places of our society. They were chosen by all of us. And it's quite symbolic, because till now we have the political constitution that we inherited from Pinochet. So that the new process that we're living now gives us a lot of hope of things that have to change, that can't go on the same way they have been going on. So it was quite particular to face COVID with a social revolt in our back. But because the social revolt made us all go out to the streets and march and talk with each other and meet with each other, meet the neighbor that we had never met before. And the COVID made us all go back to our houses and lock down and not talk to anybody and not hug anybody. So it was still is quite strange.
Yeah, it's not nice, but you know, we have to face our realities. What else can we do, each one of us?
Yes.
Yeah, I called you here because I really appreciate the role of women in the world. This is why I called you change makers. It's a common word in English, but do you know that here we actually don't have this common word in our language, which is change maker. So we invented it, and do hope now it's going to stay with us. I would like to invite Melody from Australia. Please tell us who you are.
Hello, my name's Melody Reynolds Diarra. I'm a Wongai Nudgee woman from Western Australia. I'm currently living in Melbourne on Wurundjeri land of the Kulin Nation. I've been acting in Australia since I was about 16, mainly, theatre, my passion, and recently, over the last few years, started writing. So I've kind of new coming into this, but having been in the rehearsal room and seeing how a play's put together, I'm not that sort of new to it. So yeah, that's sort of where I'm at the moment. Did you want me to talk about Melbourne? Because I could be here all night in a way, but anything else?
Yeah, for now, I mean, what's the situation for you artists? How do you cope with that, especially your people?
Well, it's torn a lot of the community apart. It's I suppose like the rest of the world, there's starting to see a big divide of those who sort of want to go towards what the government has been pushing, and those who want sovereign rights over their body. So in the Aboriginal community, it's kind of like I'm not in social media, and I don't watch the mainstream news, so I get all my information from other sources. But from what I know, it's through friends of mine. It's really torn us apart. It's pushing. There's one group pushing against the others, and it's also work-wise. There's like all the work's dropped down quite a bit for us people who don't want to succumb to the government's sort of mandate. So yeah, there's unrest. There's unrest. Yeah, that's sort of mainly what I can say there. But spiritually, I suppose holistically and spiritually, what I feel, what's going on a collective consciousness, I think we're breaking down the masculine archetypes and control structures, and the sacred feminine is coming through in a strong way, and events like this is evidence that it is. It's the voice of the feminine coming through and going, this no longer works, these things no longer work, it's got to be broken to be made again. But with the voice of the feminine, a lot of these things were built around without the women's aspect and the female and the feminine's aspect of it. So I think we're actually going through an evolution on a collective consciousness way to where there is going to be more respect and I suppose out in the public more about the sacred feminine coming through and listened to.
Thank you. And Rosemary, playwright from Australia. So you are present in international fields for a very long time with your artistic work, but you also live in a very diverse country, lots of cultures with lots of influences. How does this how does this touch you? What do you see, especially now? What is the moment you are living in?
Thank you, Tatiana, and thank you for inviting us to this festival in Slovenia. Now, first of all, I must say that I need to acknowledge that I am Zooming from Naarm, Melbourne, Australia, and that this is on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to elders, both past, present, and future, and must extend that respect to any First Nations people present here. So that would be Melody and anybody else who is First Nations who is watching this Zoom meeting. And also to say that it is important to recognize that First Nation sovereignty was never ceded, and that this continent always was, always is, and always will be Aboriginal land. And that's very important. I myself grew up in Wales, in the UK, and that it's in itself, as a country, has its own history of oppression and people losing their language, which has now come back. So in that sense, I have a small understanding of what happens here on this land. And it is amazing as a writer, because there are so many diverse cultures here that it's really inspiring as a writer. I mean, the current work that I am investigating is called Astitva, Identity. And I'm collaborating with a Pakistani migrant to Australia. And it's a transgender journey. So it's this incredible journey, culturally, geographically, mentally, physically, moving from being somebody called Ali Muhammad to becoming someone called Alia Abu. And it's just been the most remarkable writing journey to delve into this and to understand this and to be educated. And so it's just been amazing. And I just feel that, I mean, on one part, I mean, listening to what Melody has just said, we've lived in a city that's had the longest lockdown in the world. I think it's close to 260 days, 6 lockdowns. And instead of sort of coming out finally in celebration, there's so much division and hurt. And it's very upsetting to see this breaking apart of our comrades and people we've worked with.
Thank you for those nice words. I really appreciate you share this with us here and around the world. And Ilnaz, you came from Iran and moved to Australia. Tell us a little bit about yourself. I think it's best you speak about yourself.
Thank you. Yes, I came to Australia 2007. I was only 27 years old when I came. I came alone, and I migrated to Australia because I was active. I studied theatre, puppet theatre in Tehran University. And I was in the middle of my master's that I got involved with women's rights and children's rights. Iran has an Islamic regime. I'm coming from a family that my father is a rebel. He never practiced Islam, so we're being alienated all through growing up. And I have mixed blood in me. You know, I have blood from Armenia, Turkish part of Iran, Farsi part of Iran. So I kind of belong to all of that. So perhaps a bit like, Bosnian, Serbians, you know, it's very mixed. So I couldn't take any side. But the time that I left, I was in a great danger as a woman. You know, they asked me to go back. They have this ministry of, under Ministry of Culture, they have something that is for censorship in Iran. And a couple of times I've been called to go back and answer back to their questions. And if you know about the situation in Iran, if you go to the prison, it's just, it's very rarely you come out. So that was a journey. I came to Australia then, because I studied theatre, I was, artful in that way. I got to know La Mama Theatre, which also I got to see Rosemary through that. And they are independent theatre. They've been around for now, I think, 53 years. They're run by women. They're established by women. And that's amazing. So I've worked for them all these years, 12 years. I know them. I've worked in different production there. And through that, I did my PhD. I finished my PhD in performing arts just this year. And that was my cultural heritage. I've worked on ancient storytelling of Iran, who've been suppressed by current regime and, through the history after Arab invaded Iran. And especially they got women out of that concept of storytelling as well. Women, they weren't allowed to perform. So I tried to, through this practice, get them back and get to make a sense of my culture. I got to perform many of ancient stories. And eventually I started to write my own stories based on the structure of ancient Persian writing, which is mostly poetry.
We all have to thank La Mama for some things.
Absolutely.
I still remember meeting her once or twice, and she was really an amazing woman, and she supported so many artists, not just women, but everybody she thought would be worth supporting, and especially those oppressed. And what she did is like, you know, her heritage is still living, and this is so important for everybody. Yeah. Dessa, we go to Philippines now. You have a nice background. Really
Paintings
colorful.
of families and friends, everything.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. What are you doing? Where do you come from? What's your background?
Yeah, so I really came into theater as a teenager. I was a very sickly, asthmatic. I had a heart disease. I was like, you know, so I always tell people that when you are, you know, when you're a child, a very sickly child, you develop a script of victim power, you know, like you can live through days and not go to school because you have an asthma attack. Until I was 13 and I joined a 6-week workshop of one of the institutions here, the Philippine Educational Theater Association. I was still in Manila then. And it was from 8 in the morning until 5. Those are like workshops. And you know, those are the kinds of workshops that you crawl, you know, like there are no chairs, you know, like you collaborate with everyone. And I swear that after day 1, I said, I never want to get sick again. So it was such a powerful, transformative, life-changing, you know, aha moment for me. More so in the weeks to come. And that was it, you know, like, I even if I, you know, like I knew that theater was going to be part of my life. Academically, I studied economics because I thought I could use theater to introduce popular economics, you know. So again, in the trajectory of popular education, because this was in the 80s, and, you know, Freire and Boal and, you know, like some of these wonderful critical thinkers were in our discourse. So, but then fast forward in 2005, I've relocated to this lovely island that sits by the water, and then it's nestled between the sea and the mountains. And I conducted a 3-day workshop for young people, and it was on the issue of child trafficking, which is very rampant in where we are, cyber sex operation. It has become a massive cottage industry virtually. And so we just put together 30 young people. And yeah, so it was just going to be like one public performance on the issue. And that was it, you know, like one of those project things. But then it was like, again, one of those aha moments. It's like, I can't let this, you know, just dissipate and just fade out into oblivion. So I asked the young people, is this something you want to do for a longer time? This was in 2005. And then everyone was like, ah! You know, again, we didn't have any external funding. We were not attached to a school or, you know, or any institution, but we just bit the bullet. And I think that was again a part of writing a script, writing the script, that the possibility for young people. And so I've been a mentor, a director, an actor, but basically a mother to you know, like young theater people who are so. It's a trying time for us because, again, very quickly, some of you might know that for the almost last 6 years, we've had a populist president who ran by the campaign to end legal drugs in the Philippines, but also to stop corruption. And the way to get to it is just to kill people. So so there's a lot of human rights violations. There's a lot of weaponization of the law, because that kind of thinking went into anyone who was in opposition to the government. So it wasn't just the suspected drug pushers and traffickers, but it's now everyone that is opposed to the current government. He's such a misogynist, like constant joking about rape and gender-based violence. It's really a horrible time for women, but it is all, and in a sense it's also troubling, because some people play into the sexist jokes and just laugh along. So that is, and that his term is ending next year. So we are also in a tight in May of 2022. So we're also in a tight political battle, of like bringing basic decency in governance. No? So, and we like it's very polarized, because the son of a former president who was our dictator for many years, like Pinochet, is also rising into popularity. And there's a lot of revisionism, changing the narrative of what happened. But for us who grew up in martial law, we know that that the dirt and the ugliness of fascism and authoritarian rule. But yeah, so that's my world.
Thank you. For us, it's sometimes hard to understand, especially when you don't visit places like Philippines or even, some other countries in Asia, in North Asia. And also it was my wish for this occasion to invite you also for this reason, because we don't know what actually an artist does there, what's the background, how much you have to give up, but also invest and later work on it, especially in this community work, which is so important. I think when we speak about community work in Western world, it's so much less than it is in your communities. But nevertheless, we have Simona here. I invite her to talk a little bit about her situation. What is she doing now? I know she's always busy. Thank you for coming, Simona. So please.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for inviting me, and thanks to all of you actually for your very inspiring introductions and thoughts. Maybe if I introduce myself, I'm Simona Hammer. I'm a playwright and a dramaturg. And regarding the current situation in Slovenia, maybe it's best if I point out the two, of course, obvious statements. And the first one being that the pandemic, of course, has affected all of us, I'm aware, on two levels, on a personal level and on a professional level. And I don't want to go too much into details of this repatriarchalization that was accelerated during the lockdowns, when, of course, mostly women were primary caregivers and educators and entertainers while working from home. I just want to focus on a professional level, but of course from a very personal perspective. I'm a freelance playwright and dramaturg, and being a freelancer is, of course, I'm aware, very inherently unstable employment status, but during the pandemic, it kind of revealed, of course, it was obvious before, but still, at least in Slovenia, it was really obvious that freelance artists are heavily discriminated when it comes to financial aid and government support and so on. So a lot of freelance artists faced in this pandemics or are still facing quite heavy existential and financial difficulties. And I have to say that I'm afraid that this is only the beginning of the real crisis, because of all the lockdowns and all the restricted sitting arrangements and so on. I think that the big financial challenges for theaters are yet to come. So this, let me first start with the depressing thoughts, then maybe I can continue later with what can we do in the times of crisis.
Yes, so what can we do in the times of crisis? Let's go around the world and try to challenge us with that. So I want to jump to Jimena. Did you face similar problems while you were working or stopping, or you know, how are you building up new ground for your work now?
Taking the words of Simona, I also appreciate being around you women right now. Well, this COVID pandemic has made us all, I guess, it's quite a shocking surprise at first. And then I and my colleagues here in Chile have been trying to figure out how are we going to move on with theater. Because at least for me, theater is something that happens face to face. I appreciate a lot this sort of opportunities to be around the world by Zoom with other colleagues. What I think it's one of the things that maybe this crisis, I mean, theater has always been in crisis, I guess. It's always has been very difficult for everybody to perform, to go to the stage, and at least here in Chile, and I think maybe around the world. So now it's even more difficult to make theater. But it launches a question where or how are we going to move on? It's not easy. I would like to be more optimistic, but it takes twice the effort that it used to take before this pandemic, I guess. And what's something quite nice, I guess, is it's opportunities like this to, at least for me, Zoom has provided me the opportunity to study more. I really enjoy, that's a personal thing, I enjoy studying playwriting still. I do. So it has given me the opportunity to study with teachers around the world, and that's a very good thing. But I guess that due to the economical problems that we are facing right now worldwide, I guess that it will challenge us to think outside the box, because we will need, I guess, to perform, to go to the theater, to from different spaces, not the official ones, because the official ones are, if they were, at least here in Chile, if they were expensive for us, the artists, before this pandemic, now they are unreachable. So if we still want to do theater, we will have to move on to non-official spaces, I guess. But the ingredient, the essential ingredient of the face-to-face performing is something now even more attractive, I guess, for all of us, people who are in theater, people who don't usually go to the theater. Now I sense and I feel that people appreciate a lot more those small events that can take place face to face.
Thank you. So Melody, do you think this time is also an opportunity for your people? For instance, do you think that now you have more voice, or you are really feeling more oppressed? What is the reality?
I suppose it's like I said before, that kind of divide in the community, because it seems like only those who get the jab are going to get a voice. So I feel like those of us in the Aboriginal community as storytellers, I don't even know the percentage of it, but there's some of us, and it's not very many by the looks of it, that are going to be locked out of that whole sort of arena. And one of the things that that I would miss is because the immediacy of theatre and being in that same space, and it's the sharing physically the story, but emotionally as well. Like, I think that's what I'm sort of going to miss at the moment. But it's kind of pushed me from being an actor into looking seriously at writing, because goodness knows we've got enough fodder in the world at the moment for inspiration and stuff. So I suppose well, I feel like I haven't got a voice on stage as an actor. So I think it's really amped me up as a writer. But that's the conundrum there, is I write something, but then I won't be able to go to the opening night of because of my medical status. So I'm really torn between that. And a lot of our plays in the past in the Aboriginal theatre have been talking about, facing adversities against the government and what they've done to our people. So this to me is this is just another thing. When the first lockdowns first started, a lot of people were going, there was a meme that going out from the Aboriginal community saying, locked in your house, can't move around, having trouble feeding your family and all these things here. And they said, relax, you've only been Black or Aboriginal for 1 week. In other words, we've been going through all of these rules and citizenships and all those stuff there of having to prove who we are and where we can go and all that in the past history of Australia. So it's kind of like, yeah, it's a familiar thing, but it's just turned up so much more at the moment. So I'm really curious to see what stories are going to come out of this, especially out of the Aboriginal community, because those that have seemed to have jumped in bed with the government, are they still going to be telling stories against the government like they were before? So it's really, really interesting to see, where we're going to be at in the next few months or year or so.
Thank you. And there's another big issue just in front of us, which we are facing every day, and especially the Asian part of the world. And I know August is very active in this field, which we call climate change. I've heard about it, really become aware some years ago with our friend Cecile. She was always talking, this nice lady, about climate change, and nobody really understood. And then in one moment, I tried to think about it, because I said to myself, well, what's this lady talking about, And then, of course, we face the consequences now, and the world is really changing rapidly. But, this conference now they're having is getting nowhere, because really it should start now. And also, there has been a playwright contest on this topic some years ago, and you are still working on it, August, every day. How about climate change?
Well, we can really not stop climate change to happen, that is actually what we are doing now. It's something that we can, put a stop or put your wall or borders whatsoever. But if there's one thing that we can do, we can reduce the risk, the disasters, and the effect that it will have in the people in the community. And one good thing though is that, for example, in my work, I actually am a playwright, a freelance playwright, but my full-time job is I work with the government, which is actually a national economic development agency of the country. And we have a particular committee that handles really the rehabilitation and recovery of any event that happens, particularly in my regional island, that really handles addressing, mitigating, helping people prepare in terms of a typhoon. And in the case of the Philippines, our country is actually a gateway to tropical typhoons, and we almost have 20 to 21 typhoons in a year. 5 of that actually gives landfall to our country. So it's part of our lives. We were born with typhoon in our country. We grow old with typhoon. So we get used to it. But eventually, we really need to find a very good measures to really reduce the death, the number of death, the damage it's going to have to people, especially those who will be displaced or they will lose their houses. And I think that we really have to look into projects that could really mitigate the effect of climate change. And one aspect of that is the green gray infrastructure that we're doing. However, in the field of arts and theater, how do we can come in? The thing that I see is that our role is to educate people, help educating people what climate change is all about. And that's why Cecile Guidotti Alvarez, the president, ex-officio president of the International Theater Institute Philippine Center, she's very vocal of telling people and advocating how important it is to protect the environment, and everything that we do that harm the environment would actually hasten the effect of climate change against us. So that's one. Even the simple management of waste, garbage that we do from our own household. That's just a simple thing. And theater artists can actually educate our community by doing and campaigning for that through our words, our written works. And for Philippines, for example, us here in the Visayas Island, where I'm not from the capital in Manila. We are, Desa and I were like neighbor islands now in the very center of the country. And we don't have actually a very good theater venues, like big venues that we have in the mainstream. What we have is alternative venues. Sometimes we just do a performance in a gym. Sometimes it's just an open space in a town square where people can communicate. But that's community theater for us here. And most are actually small community theater groups based in the universities. And that's what we do. I mean, focusing on raising social consciousness to people in a community. And that's what very good about theater that we do here in the Philippines, because we go beyond on what is theater as art, but we go beyond what theater can do to actually educate people and make people realize the importance that they can contribute if they will just have to listen to what is going on around them, and how can we help each other. And I see that theater, whether or even any forms of art, can be very, very a strong medium that we can use to really tell and make that message cross from our people in the bureaucracy, and then connecting it to the people in the community. So, and that's the challenge that we have. And right now, the International Playwrights Forum, Philippine chapter, with Dr. Anton Hawan and colleague Tanya Lopez, also here in Visayas, and I, together with the ITI Philippine Center, we are actually conducting a playwriting competition for emerging playwrights. And the focus of the competition is on the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, on how can your work be served as a womb to educate people in expressing the importance of social justice, environment, women's equality and free education for all, and health and nutrition for everyone. And everybody was saying, it's how can you put that social issues in a literary work? But writers are very creative, and our words are even more powerful than those written words from the bureaucracy. So because we empathize, we understand the stories of the people, and it's through our written work that we can actually bring more support. And once we do that, we can actually bring more support with not only with a few selected people in our community, but it can resonate not only to our country but also to other countries in other parts of the world. So I think that's the very challenge that we do in terms of climate change, and how art can actually be a tool in telling our stories about climate change.
Great. This is what I wanted to hear with all your power. What you're telling us. That's great. Rosemary, out from your experience, is it like an artist can be an activist, artist can be a politician? Is this close to this, change that is coming, that maybe we are somehow closer to people, and maybe somehow we can have, more resources from communities supporting each other and overcoming this terrible times?
Yes, well, I guess I want to go to the very personal here. It was pretty amazing. In 2020, just as COVID was starting, I had an invitation to Manila, to the Women Festival of Plays. And people were saying to me here, oh, should you go? I don't know if it's a good idea you go. And I just thought, oh, I've got to go. It's such an amazing opportunity. And it was so incredible to go to Manila and meet August and Dessa and see this incredible festival of plays. There was a reading of one of my plays, a little reading. And what we decided at La Mama before I went was that we wanted to do an exchange, and that we would choose 3 plays from the festival that were readings, not performances, and bring them back to La Mama. And so we did this. But then what happened was, yes, COVID and lockdown, but La Mama opened in December. It was only a brief time because we only had a brief time out of lockdown, with these 3 play readings from these Filipino playwrights. And it was incredible because, yes, as Dessa was saying, one of them dealt with child rape, one was to do with sex trafficking, and then one was actually about the artist's predicament. And it was so incredible because in the theater at La Mama, because even though we'd come out of COVID, there were still all these restrictions. So the actors had to sit at the far end of the stage, and then instead of having 80 people there, we could only have 20 all in masks. But it was the most remarkable event, and people just loved these plays and were so taken. And we had some Filipino actors who live in Australia. We had Anglo actors, and it was just this remarkable and joyous occasion. So yes, so that's part of our connection globally, even though it was in this small space in at La Mama. And for me, myself, and I don't know how people here feel about him, but La Mama is opening up. It was burnt down, and Elnis will tell you more about that in a minute, but there was a massive community drive to rebuild that theatre. And now there will be a big festival opening up in December. But I've written a play, but it's very surreal. And it's about Julian Assange, who's a prisoner in Belmarsh prison. And the reason I wanted to write about him, his lawyer came to talk to us. And it's about whistleblowers. It's about people who stand against governments. It's about people who tell the truth, and why these people are being silenced. But it's taken from the viewpoint of 3 women who work in that prison. And it's a very surreal play. So
I will keep one question for the last round we have. And now, from all this diversity and strengths as a woman, can you talk about it a bit, Elnas, as a storyteller, as a woman? So now when you moved to Australia for years, when you work, how did you blossom? You know what I mean? How did you use your inner capacity as a woman?
The paradoxical thing is that when you leave your own country, you become more of that country because you're living in a foreign land. And for us to be, to live, coexist with what we called white people, and for the whole oppression that and discomfort that comes to those countries really by white men. We carry something in ourselves. But when I came here, I didn't have that perspective as strong because we had a regime that they brutalized us as well. So I was kind of running away. And of course, that was it. So I kept coming here. First thing was that first freedom. But then when you live here and you just become friends to First Nation people here, and you develop, there are multi-layers to this. But for me to get the support in terms of, in La Mama, the first support that I got, it was just days of performing. For theater is nothing more important than doing theater, and so that was opportunity, and that I got, and I kept practicing. In my culture, we don't believe in geniuses. We don't believe in people that they are better than others. We believe in working hard. So I took those ancient practices, and I was just doing it and doing it. I wasn't waiting for somebody to tell me I'm good or I'm not good. I was more interested in the process and doing it, and going from one step to another and try my ideas and see what is fitting. So that was that. And also to go back to my culture and to get that opportunity and to get a scholarship in Melbourne Uni, to do that. That was amazing. Although later on I understood that they're picking up people like me because we are good for the database, in terms of, and it is, and I understand it's very good, but the chance that is being given to us is not necessarily, you always go to those privileged universities. We were talking about one of the most privileged, I think, in Melbourne University. When I went there, I was almost, very few people. They were there like me, and we knew why we are there. We were there to, but that's finished. And now this is a new time, and I have to decide what I'm going to do with this, because education is truly privileged. And so I got that privilege, but what I'm going to do with it, like many of you in this room, I'm going to pass it on as an educational program, and I'm going to dedicate myself to that. And I decide to, although I study in a very rich university, I'm not going to work for them. So I decide to stay by poorest, unprivileged crowd. Yeah.
I appreciate what you shared with us. Really. So what is the power of women in Philippines? What is the real power? I mean, I know quite some artists and other people from Philippines, but what I really can recognize is the power that women have, no matter how life is hard for women in Philippines. So yes, tell me so we can understand.
I don't think I'll be able to speak in behalf of all the Filipino women.
You represent
Philippines. I come from like my I come from my family. So I will speak about my family. I have 5 siblings. I have 3 brothers and 2 sisters. So growing up, it was always like 3 girls versus the 3 boys. But then my mother was just an incredible person. So we had a role model. She was a nurse, then became a public health teacher. She was an activist organizing health workers. And in fact, at some point, like in 86, then became part of the drafting of the new constitution after the military authoritarian regime of Marcos. So I grew up knowing that we could do something. And I think even my coming into theater was really in the spirit that, of our agency, believing and having faith in that. And culturally, despite 300 years under Spain and Catholicism and 50 years of Hollywood through the United States, we can hark back really on again our ancestral roots of like spiritual goddesses. Like we had a very strong women in our history. Who fought the wars, who were spiritual leaders of their times. So I think that is in the collective unconscious that continues to live through August, myself, and so there are many of us that are very active in the arts, in governance, and in other places of decision making. But I think it is not always also a guarantee, because we've had 2 women presidents, which is, again, by all measures is remarkable historically, but they do not necessarily really reflect really the interests of a sort of like an empowering, transformative, and even feminist ethics. No, so. But I think in what I think what we are very good at, and I could speak for myself, is really multitasking. It's like since the pandemic, I was like, I've never been so busier in my life, because again, working with young people, I realized that they are some of the most adaptable people. I mean, despite the digital divide here in our country. So when we decided, okay, we cannot do face to face, we cannot wait until that point. So now we've done theater performances with masks that are decorated. We've pivoted to radio. I mean, like no one was trained to do radio drama, but now like we are writing for radios every week. No, and the basic impetus is because we need to tell our stories, and so let's figure out whether this is still theater or like if we videotape whether is that really theater or now film. I was like, let's debate about that later. But in the meantime, we just need to be able to continue to do our work of telling stories, as I think many of us are trying to grapple with at this moment. So I am again the women power is there, but one really has to also be critical about what that means, because it is not just in the sheer number of women in governance or in decision making, but what kind of culture, what kind of ethics they bring into our lives.
Yeah, I think I can add some more information to what Tessa said, and that's true. We are the only country in the world that when we did the revolution, we put a woman as a president, and that's in history. And then and it's also true that majority of the women in the government is very huge. At the moment, most of the positions in the government are actually occupied in the executive, and the departments are occupied by women. Not in the elected positions alone, but actually in the permanent positions in the government, and majority are women. So that's how women empowerment is. But and that's true. It's not yet still an assurance that, you know, women's protections and rights could be really pushed forward on. But eventually, we are actually also protected by a law that we have, which is a Magna Carta of women, that provides 5% of the annual budget of the government every year will be for women and gender development, which is a very milestone achievement, I guess, in terms of law. It was like a 15-year fight on how to pass that into law. It has so many versions before it became into law. There's so many rallies and protests in order to put that law in the legislative body, but we eventually have that. So I think that's one major accomplishment that we have in the country, and I think more consciousness are really raised now in terms of women's rights and equality and equity, not only for women but for all gender. Philippines among Asian countries are very strong in terms of understanding and having this strong consciousness about LGBTQ community. And not only that, maybe because we also have a very strong diverse culture in the country. We have like 171 languages, and in the Philippines. So that alone actually, you know, we might that alone actually shows a very strong voices that we have in terms of diversity, in terms of colors, because we do have varied colors as well in terms of our race, because Philippines have by history as colonized by so many countries. We have also some mixed blood but we're proud of that. You know, we are also always proud with how Filipino race evolved for so many years, and with the very strong women all across the world now. Philippines is actually very actually have a very strong impact right now in the care economy, especially in the pandemic. Our Filipino nurses are really in demand in the US and all other parts of the world because of how good they perform in terms of providing assistance and response during the time of pandemic. And that's one. And the other sad thing though is that we are missing a lot of number of nurses that we need here in the country, because majority of our nurses is in other parts of the country, serving in various hospitals internationally. So I think that's probably I can add to how women actually influences Philippines in terms of not only in art, not only in but also in governance and all aspects of development in a country.
You may be very surprised that here in Australia, first woman Prime Minister, Julia Gillard, so she's around 2010 to 2013, the misogyny against her was horrific. There were big signs held up like "Burn the Witch." Can you believe that? In the 21st century?
We can believe
incredible.
everything we can believe. Everything became real. Look at the situation we are now.
Yes.
Who would have even thought about it? So, Simona, how would you wrap up this ideas, this conversation a bit before I give you final question?
Actually, what is resonating with me the most is the fact that obviously art or creativity always finds its way. I think this is really important. For me also, this experience of the last year and a half, or how long has it been? Yes, is a journey to discover how I can be creative in virtual spaces, how I can be creative without the guarantee of an audience or a publication or a staging of my play. So I think we artists are always extremely good in adapting if we are able to stimulate our imagination. So I just maybe want to mention one project that I kind of initiated last year during the first lockdown. I think it was April 2020. It was actually a collaboration or production of the festival that is hosting us, the Week of Slovenian Drama, or the Festival of Slovenian Drama. And the project was is called Monologues from the Sofa. I think it's kind of self-explanatory. So actually we invited 8 playwrights, Slovenian playwrights, to write monologues with a very simple instruction that they should keep in mind that the actors must be able to record or to film themselves. So this was a very good experience, I have to say, in regards of how theater usually is very rigid, very slow. I mean, this is like a very long process before you can convince somebody to read your play, to stage it, etc. But this was kind of, you know, spread of a moment kind of a thing. And as much as I'm aware now, I think the monologues are translated in English, and I hope they're going to be also available for international audience soon. So yes, this
was a happy moment when I went to theater after so many months, because then they put it on stage as well as soon as it was possible to do it. Yeah, the final question would be for each one of you in approximately same lineup as we had now. What would be what's your first next step you're going to set for the future, for your work, your ideas, your creativity, your community work, your activism, everything? Of course, it is different for each one of you, but what is your focus now? It's really important to have one, I believe. Melody?
I'd say being a storyteller and having that honor and the responsibility to be the voice to what's going on at the moment is probably to seek out those who are really struggling with what's going on at the moment and maybe help collect their ideas and their voices to put it together. So, you know, make some sort of conglomerate of voicing the voiceless at the moment, because the theatre companies are all sort of in various disarray kind of thing and building themselves back up. But I suppose Aboriginal artists in Australia, I'd really like to hear what, you know, how they've been affected by this and how they all continue to keep on storytelling. So I suppose I want to tell the stories of the storytellers in a way.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would like to I don't hear you.
Hello?
Yeah, now it's okay.
Yeah.
I would really like to follow up with you for the future. Yeah. Really.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. And Jimena, how about your work in the scope of diverse culture in Chile? Are you going to be active in this work even more? What do you think is the topic for Chile now?
That's a good question, and you made me think about it. Maybe because right now I'm just in the middle of the process of, I really don't have a definite answer right now, but I guess it has a lot to do with the role of women in society. How can we really, in a concrete, I mean, I don't know if that's a word, but in a concrete way, have participation, not only in the not only as a good idea, but really get to be some sort of real influence. Because for my experience, I'm part of a Chilean women authors. That's a feminist collective of, and we start talking and thinking a lot about how can we write basic words and start that are part of our language, and that may be the basis of our new constitution also. For example, if we talk about what's a family, how do we think family? Those basic questions are maybe what are making me think a lot about even my playwriting. Now, for example, I start thinking how do I write women in theater? How do I see them? How do I see us? Because I think it's quite urgent to make a change. I mean, regarding the climate change issue, I guess the only way we can get to see something, get to live in a better world, has to do with the role of women. That's central, I guess. And maybe more central because I live in quite a continent, a country ruled by men, white men, I guess. So, and now, right now here in Chile, there's something that's, it's quite urgent to focus on also, and it's the crisis that we're living right now, this day, at the southern part of Chile, where there's military forces are settling right now in the middle of the Mapuche reservations, because there's a conflict that has never been solved, and it is urgent that it has to be solved in a pacific way, not with repression. So I guess it has to do something around that way, I guess.
Yeah, we are in a conflict somehow, all the time. What is your idea, Rosemary? What we should do? What will you do? What is your plan?
I don't know. It's quite interesting. I mean, in all my plays, I tend to experiment with form, but I think having been in this lockdown, I mean, I'm sure everybody here has very rich internal lives, but it was quite interesting because the first year of the lockdown, I kept a journal of every day. But then the second year, I just started writing my dreams. I don't know, I gave away everything else and just started writing my dreams. And I just think it's about new ways of seeing. I mean, I don't know in your cultures, but in here in Melbourne, we have so many musicals. It's like everybody wants to go and see a musical. And it's just finding other forms and shapes and ways of creating that really reach people and touch people. And I truly believe that in the coming years, it is going to be the voice of women. They will have the most powerful voice in these coming years. I have absolutely no doubt about that.
Okay, let's be hopeful. We have no doubt about it. You are so right. Elnas, what will come back to your storytelling? Can you connect your past and the future?
I did a show, by the way, right after Rosemary did her show and La Mama opened up. 11 days, I got the chance to put my show up, which I've worked through, and I'm going to explain that through this script I wrote for you here. So I got the chance to do that. So I never stopped. I never even lost my hope while I was waiting for this time to comes up in La Mama, because we didn't know that it's going to be opened up. Back and forth, I got emails saying, oh, it's going to be open, it's not going to be open. You know, rules are very... So anyway, I did that. But look, I'm just completely, I'm like Dr. Faustus, you know, I sold my soul to theater. I believe in theater. Theater saved me. I didn't make money out of theater, but I made my life through it. It's a way of living. So I think, the God of theater find a way for us, you know, but by that I mean, in ancient way it has one meaning. In a contemporary life, it means that it's 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm sitting here talking to you. This is belief, this is hope. So I'm just trying to, you know, educate myself every day a bit more, not lose my hope and not give in, because the society, in all this conversation that we go around and histories that you read, is just, it's not because we are not as good as men, because they are good at suppressing us. And this is the system, we stay in the back. So that's a very good start, you know, because sometimes I doubted my intellect. Now I don't have that doubt. I only have belief, and I've just wanted to find people that they are similar to me, to give me that help, which is encouragement. And I already have Rosemary, for example, you know, every time that we see each other, it's just the hope, you know, in 2 different, you know, spectrum of this art form, and you too. So I'm just keeping the hope, see what happens. Yeah.
Thank you so much. You brought a big smile on our faces. That's great. Yeah, what's the message of Filipino lady, August, smiling lady? What would your message be at the end?
Maybe I can have first Dessa she's also a board member of our Women Playwrights Philippine chapter. So maybe Dessa can go first, and I'll just give a little wrap up of what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, thanks, August, and thanks everyone. I you know, it's almost midnight here too, but it's just so refreshing. I mean, I feel so, you know, so glued into everyone's voice, and definitely inspiring moment with you all. You know, my circumstance is a bit different. I think because I have played the stage mother to young people in theater, there's a lot of like mentoring, a lot of dramaturgy, a lot of producing, a lot of resource generation. And I think I need to just carve out time to do my own writing and my own creative work, because that so oftentimes becomes subordinated by the need to take care of others. So I have not found that balance, truthfully. But in the meantime, there's also the nearing elections, which is really rather huge in our context, because we're almost 6 years through a very, you know, like horrific period politically and socially. And so, but it's a lot of noise. I mean, right now I'm also like, you know, I don't want to go into the social media, because there's just a lot of vitriol, just a lot of like just angry and very polarized voices. So it's like I'm still finding, you know, like internally, it's like, you know, how who do you talk to? How do you tell your story? How do you listen to each other? How do you go back to fundamentals of human conversations that are about how are you? What is important to you? And you know, like just listen to why they choose certain people or certain positions, and just engage people. So I'm trying to also just find my, you know, somehow my bearing, and the vessel by which I could still be, engage in this. But in the meantime, it's the balance, I think, that I find is very crucial for my own for my own position.
Yeah,
August?
So now to August,
Yeah.
and then we
Go back to
Mona and
Simone.
I.
Yeah.
We have to wrap up and
Okay.
close the session. So August.
Next steps. Maybe I can come up with a play about the satire of the stories of the people during the pandemic, especially how people here respond. It's crazy. It's a lot of crazy things being done, and maybe some shortcomings from the various institutions. But on the other hand, if there's one thing that really keeps us sane, and both our mental and physical health, despite all what's going on, the rise of arts and culture in the platform, virtual platform, help us a lot to be very sane, mental health and physical health all at the same time. And that is really, really a one way that people, especially in the bureaucracy, find that arts and culture is very resilient in terms of facing in the pandemic. Yeah, a lot of artists were displaced and lost their job, but then again, we are more creative, and we are actually adaptable and transform ourselves into a virtual platform. We don't have a physical venue, we have a virtual venue to show our works and perform and exhibit. On the other hand, for Women Playwrights International, of course, we are still preparing for the Montreal conference next year, and after that we will be very busy preparing for the Seoul conference, and we already had initial discussions with the Women's Theater Association in Korea, that will be the main host organization, and we would love to invite theater artists in Slovenia to be part of the conference, to join us. And we will usually send a call for submission for the selection of plays, and particularly for women playwrights who are interested to submit their play, and that will be in preparation for the 2025 conference. On the other hand, in the Philippines, we will have a Kuris Theater Festival next year, and we might be interested to invite Simona and Elnas to, if you could share your script for a dramatic reading here by Filipino actors, we can do that in February next year for our Arts Month. And this year, last February, we have Jimena and Rosemary scripts, and including Melody Reynolds scripts read by dramatic reading by Filipino actors. So we would be happy to include you in our invited playwrights this next year in February. And also, we also have the Glow Play Forum, which is a global women's play reading and a forum. So we will have a third season of that. So that with all this pandemic and all, we don't have money, but still we move on and come up with new projects despite all these things. And I think that's the thing. If you're so bored and locked down in your room, you can come up a lot of creative things that you want to do since you have a virtual access, and then connect with people similar like this, conduct workshops, attend webinars. So I think that's it for us, and we look forward because WPI in itself will be having a reorganization and like a makeover. We're doing a makeover wherein we will probably strengthen the regional representations of women. As of the present, we have Asian region, Oceania, and the Pacific. And then we have the Europe region, we have the North America region and Canada, and then the Latin America, South America, and Africa region. So we might have strengthen that regional groupings of women playwrights, so that each regional cluster of women playwrights will have a focus project in every 3 years before the conference happens. So it's going to be a big work for us, but hopefully this we need to have some development that we need to do in the organization itself. So, and again, I would like to thank the CRAN Festival, ITI Slovenia Center, Tatiana, our team in the ITI Philippine Center, ITI Worldwide, and the Slovenia Center for this particular chance to work for the first time in this particular event. And I hope we can have more collaboration in the future. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you. Oh, so many plans. That's great for sharing with us. It stays on YouTube, so you have to fulfill your You have to deliver your promises. Now, Simona, we are here in the end of this conversation. What are your plans now?
I guess I know what my plans for February are now. Thank you for the invitation. It sounds wonderful. Yes, it's really hard for me to talk about my plans or my mission, or I prefer to talk about the challenges that I yes, let's talk about challenges. I think the biggest challenge for me as a human being, of course, and as a member of a very small, of course, Slovenian artistic community, and as a mentor and as a writer, of course, it's how to talk, how to think, how to write, how to show the complexity of the chaos of all the problems that we kind of, talked about a little bit today. But then at the same time, how to stay curious, how to stay playful in all of this, how to find this right balance so that, you don't burn out as an artist and as a person. So this, I have to say, is kind of my challenge or my mission.
Thank you. We came all the way around the world. It was so nice that we finally managed to do this, to have you here in virtual space in Kran at this festival. Also, I believe there will be better days for us to reunite one day for real. And yes, I would like to thank all our organizations. I would like to thank ITI Worldwide, Slovenian Center ITI, Filipino Center ITI, Women Playwrights International, all of you. And also I'm sending best regards to our Director General, Tobias Biancone. He was really super excited to see us here on this stage, on this screen, talking to each other. And I believe this is a good starting point for the future. We really didn't want to meet here to change anything right now, but with little steps, we might get somewhere. And yes, I have really interesting chat here going on now. And as I just said, creativity cannot be locked down. Of course, thank you for this reminder. Yes, creativity is the heart of what we do, whatever we do. It's, imagine if only our politicians would be so creative, the world would be different. And if the economy would be creative, they would think about some other kind of economy rather than the one they have. And if, the systems would be creative, they would already make a step ahead, but we should stay focused that this will happen with us together. So really, in the end, I have to thank everybody helping me with this event here in Kran, all the staff, all the people around me, that our connection was really, really so good. So yeah, let's wait for the moment when the sky opens and we buy our tickets and we find a way to meet in a modest way. Yeah, not too much traveling. We can do a lot online. But anyway, we have to hug each other. Thank you so much, ladies. It was my pleasure and honor to host you here tonight. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Tatiana.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
and see you soon.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Big
Love
hug.
to meet you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.